Welcome everyone to this Empower Hour, and the whole idea is it's supposed to be an informal opportunity to talk about a particular topic, and this topic is around being a non-exec director. So I'll just generally go through the agenda for the session. I'm introducing the event. I'm Judith Common, and my session is entitled From the Beat to the Boardroom, but at the current moment in time I'm actually a non-exec director at Tynehausen, but more about that later. I'm also joined by Kate Abson, who is the Director of Assets and Development at Believehausen. And she's going to look about how does being a NED differ from the day job, because obviously she is a professional within the housing sector, but is also a non-exec director, and talk about the differences between those two roles and how this to support one another. And Amy Mooney is a business entrepreneur, is going to talk about it's all in the preparation. Amy is one of the first people to come through Believehausen's board trainee programme. So Amy's going to talk about what that actually did for her and how it prepared her for the role that she now has, which is a non-exec director at Believe. We're going to try and finish, sort of each of us have got allowed a quarter of an hour for our input, and then we're going to finish with plenty of time for questions. So hopefully Alma's going to keep us to time as well. If we overrun, which is quite likely because I just go off at tangents, Alma's going to keep us to time and bring us back on track and say, right, you need to be winding up now. Because I think the whole idea of a session like this, we're in your lunch hour or we're in your sort of your working day or whatever, and it's about you getting the most out of this session so that you've got some things to take away with you for when we finish. And I've actually pulled a slide together as well with some of my learning takeaways from my experiences as a non-exec director. But my own personal experience is very, very different to sort of quite a lot of other colleagues that I've come across in the sector, in that I am not from the housing sector. I'm actually a retired senior police officer, and I joined the police service years and years and years ago. And my little input is about from the beat to the boardroom, because I think one of the things about being a police officer is it actually enables you to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of human life. I think one of the things that most of my service has been in and around the Newcastle, Tyneside area, and I have had the opportunity of sort of working with people that are
Sorry. Oh gosh.
Judith, we're on mute. If you're able to unmute.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Judith. I tried to mute everybody and that inadvertently muted you as well.
I'm unmuted. Right, okay.
Sorry, that was my fault. I tried to mute everybody else and muted you.
I was in full flow there, and I was telling you all about my experiences. So I'll just try and condense that a little bit. Most people assume that I've got a background in social housing, that my career was in social housing. It wasn't. I'm actually a retired senior police officer, joined the police service as an 18-and-a-half-year-old straight from school with very little life experience. But what I can say is in that 30 years of policing experience, I was exposed to the good, the bad, and the ugly of human life. And I think that's definitely shaped who I am and what I am today. And, throughout my policing career, I've worked in both operational policing, but also more specialist policing, about providing services to some of our most vulnerable members of the communities, homelessness, around domestic abuse, around asylum seekers. I was involved in a national working group around asylum seekers when we got the first arrivals back in sort of the early 90s in Newcastle. So lots and lots of experience there. And I think one of the things that came out of that experience for me was around people need support, the need to be made to feel safe, and the also need to have that shelter, that place, that secure place to call home, whether that's somebody first arriving in this country, whether it's somebody coming out of prison, whether it's somebody suffering, experiencing domestic abuse. And through my time in the community safety department, when we looked at partnership working, I worked alongside some real movers and shakers within some of these sectors, which clearly helped shape who I am and what I am today. And I learned so much from them. And I think one of the things that from that whole experience is that no matter what we're dealing with, no matter who we are or what we're doing, we actually are learning, whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly, as I've said. We actually learn a lot along the way that we put into this, I call it my haversack of life, that we constantly put those experiences in there, and they definitely help shape who we are and what we are. And I learned such a lot from my time as a police officer about how we can work together, work with partners to actually address vulnerabilities and address people with very specialist needs within our communities. So I think the stage was set there for subsequently what followed on in my other careers. And then when I left the police service, and I joined at 18 and a half, so I was only 48 and a half when I left the police service. It's too young to not do anything, but I felt the need to find myself. I needed to find me. And I went off to the Caribbean for a couple of years and worked as a teacher in a local school in the Caribbean. And I think that was a journey of self-discovery for me as well. I learned an awful lot more about diversity, about minoritized communities, about vulnerabilities, about scraping beneath the surface of this most beautiful Caribbean island and seeing absolute abject poverty. So that was another sort of lifelong experience of learning experience for me. And after 2 years in the Caribbean, I came back home. And I knew that there was something around the social housing sector that I wanted to be involved in. But I was actually on a train coming back home from Heathrow, back up to Newcastle, and there just happened to be a copy of the Evening Chronicle lying there. And I opened the Evening Chronicle, and there was an advert for board members for Your Homes Newcastle. And when sometimes it's a light bulb moment, you think, oh, I wonder if I could do that. So I duly applied to become a board member at YHN, which was one of the largest almos in the Northeast at the time. And I went for the interview, not really hopeful that I would get a place because I didn't have that sort of social housing background. But what I talked about was passion, about commitment, about how I understood the communities in Newcastle. I'd been involved in operational policing in Newcastle, and I actually got a place on the board at YHN, which was a tremendous opportunity for me to sort of then understand more about what social housing was all about. Because I think there's a perception, isn't there, from the outside world that social housing is about giving somebody a house, and then when you give them a house, that's it, problem solved. And you and I all know that that's just the start of the process. It's about what wraparound services that help individuals to make that house into a home, to help support them maintain their tenancy, help support them into work. It's all those sorts of areas, isn't it, that actually I'm just moving my papers around a little bit to make sure I'm not missing anything. It's all those things that actually help people to live fulfilled lives. And I think I was really grateful to be given that opportunity at YHN. And I was there in total for 8 years. And was also given the opportunity to be on the board at Lisa's Homes, which was a new build project within YHN's sort of portfolio. So I was asked, did I want to go to a conference? Did I want to be their rep on Lisa's Homes? Did I want to do this? Did I want to do that training? Did I want to do this training? And all I would say is I just said yes to absolutely everything because my knowledge base was like zero. I knew nothing really about social housing other than the fact that I'd met people who lived in social housing, knew about vulnerabilities and such like. And it was a massive learning curve for me. But I just said, yes, 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 I'll go to that conference. Yes, I'll take that, do that the advanced governance qualification. I'll do this, I'll do that. I'll chair this committee meeting. And from that point of view, I learned a tremendous amount. So I think one of the lessons there in life is about make the most of training and opportunities that's presented to you, not just in the work environment, but also within your domestic environment as well. There's lots of things within your domestic environments, whether it's sort of helping out a football club, helping out or whatever, with it, that your kids are doing, that you can actually learn from. So in 2014, just as I was leaving YHN, I heard about a stock transfer within County Durham, and a new shadow board was being established. And I duly applied for that, thinking, actually, I've got a little bit more knowledge now around social housing. It's going to be quite exciting because it's a new company. So I applied for it. I applied for that role. And not only did I get a place on the board, but they actually put me down as their chair, which was a really scary sort of place to be the chair of this new shadow board, and then ultimately the chair of County Durham Housing Group. And I think then you start looking at yourself and thinking, we talk about imposter syndrome and all sorts of thought, do I have the skill set to be the chair of this new organisation? What it brought home to me was the fact that I needed to be a better networked. I needed to have support around me. I needed to look at not just in the Northeast, but wider afield. So, you join the National Housing Federation, you join the Chartered Institute of Housing. I got myself a really, really good mentor, which was incredible. Somebody who was already a female chair of the Northeast Housing Association. And, I joined Wish Northeast, or I was going to say I joined Wish Northeast. Wish Northeast didn't even exist then. I met a wonderful woman called Caroline Gitcham, who was establishing Wish Northeast, and I became one of the founding board members of Wish Northeast, which was incredible in terms of, even to this day, still connects me with these really great movers and shakers within the sector. So, I would say network, recognise where your gaps are, and try yourself to sort of plug those gaps. But for me, learning, the most important learning element out of being the chair of Believe Housing was the importance of networking and having a supportive group to rely upon. And that we still have a lot of learning to do. We never know it all. Towards the end of my tenure at Believe, I sort of was involved in sort of chairs and chief exec groups and such like. And there was a dearth of women, really, sort of not within the sector as such, but with achieving sort of chair roles or whatever within the sector. But there was also a dearth of alternative voices coming through the sector. And I think it's really important to have those alternative voices coming through, to have people with lived life experience. So one of the things I was involved in was setting up or sponsoring a training program at Believe Housing. And Amy Mooney, who's going to speak after me, is one of the first people to actually come through that training program and has secured a board position. I'm a firm believer that diversity of thought and lived life experience is critical to maintaining a robust and challenging decision-making body. I left Believe Housing and thought, what do I want to do now? I've been the chair of this amazing organisation. So the County Durham Housing Group transferred into Believe Housing. I've been the chair for 9 years, which was a long time as a chair. And what did I want to do now? So I've actually gone right back to the beginning, right back to where I came from. And I'm actually on the board at Tyne Housing. I'm a non-exec director at Tyne Housing, which deals with people with specialist needs, vulnerabilities. And I love the element of the work that Tyne do about supporting people to get to a better place. So I'm on the board of Tyne and absolutely love it. I think it was a good decision for me to, rather than go on to another big housing association or whatever, to sort of go back to my roots and, give something back. But I still do quite a lot of mentoring. I still act as a mentor for the Housing Diversity Network. And I'm actually involved in a new initiative that Crystal Hicks has pulled together in our role at Crisis, which is a Women's Homelessness Housing Alliance steering group. So I participate in that, which sings to all the things that I'm really interested in. And I'm still involved around domestic abuse. And we're through with my friend Kelly Henderson, still involved in sort of helping and supporting and doing whatever I can to tackle domestic abuse. So I think that's pretty much my journey to the present day. Obviously, I'm still very much a part of Wish Northeast. Whilst my time as a board member at Wish Northeast is finished now, I'm still an ambassador, or act as an ambassador advocate in everything that Wish Northeast do. So if you're not a member or whatever, It's a tremendous opportunity to network. Alma, would you mind just putting my slide up, which has got the experiences on, my learning takeaways, just so people, and I know you can get a copy of this one. Right, my learning takeaways: all experience is relevant, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we all have directly transferable skills. Think about the skills that you've got, not just in your working life, but also in your domestic life and your home life. And make the most of learning and development opportunities presented to you, not just at work, but also in your leisure time. There'll be lots of things that are given to you or offered to you. And think about, how does this actually make you a more rounded individual? Network extensively, you'll meet incredible individuals. And I believe that lived life experience, emotional intelligence, and diversity of thought are critical to the role of a non-exec director. We don't want a board of people who are all the same. We need difference. We really, really need that difference. And that difference around lived life experience, I think, is critical. You always try to be the best you can, but cut yourself some slack. Sometimes it's either not the right time for you, you don't get it right all the time, so just cut yourself a bit of slack and do something you're passionate about, which is why I've now gone back to Tyne, gone back to the city, gone back to Newcastle, because that's where I started and that's what I'm passionate about. So that is me, and you're going to have some opportunities to ask some questions later. But I'm now going to pass on to Kate Abson, who, as I say, is actually doing the day job and is a non-exec director as well. So over to Kate.
Thank you, Judith. I really appreciate that. And gosh, I've known you for years and I've just learned some extra bits on top. So that was fabulous. Thank you so much. Afternoon, everybody. I'll not bore you too much, hopefully, but hopefully I've got some takeaways for you. Like Judith, some bits that I've learned through my non-exec experience. And I apologise for the croaky voice. Hopefully it withstands the 10 minutes that I'm going to speak for. I'm a Sunderland supporter, so the 96th-minute winner at the weekend has still playing havoc with my throat as we enter the Monday morning week. So sorry about that, but not sorry, because it was a good win on Saturday. So a bit about me and my career history. I started working life as an apprentice, working for my local authority, Durham County Council, at 16. And that was principally because I did not have a Scooby-Doo about what I wanted to do when I grew up and what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And to be quite honest, I'm still trying to work it out now. But they say everything happens for a reason. And I was very fortunate in those early days of my apprenticeship to be placed in the council's property department, where I fell in love, it has to be said, with the built environment, with everything property. And I was literally captivated that the decisions I could make as a property professional would then become a tangible asset that would stand and serve a community for hundreds of years to come in the future. That just absolutely blew my mind. So I was lucky enough that I was supported through college. I got a Bachelor's of Honours degree, and I trained to be a chartered surveyor with Durham County Council, becoming chartered in 2008. And at that time, I was also fortunate that I'd been working alongside all of that study and education. So I had lots of job experience, on the job experience, and also not a penny's worth of student debt. So I'm all for a good apprenticeship. I made the move in 2012 across into the social housing sector. Again, a bit like Judith, it was a sector that really spoke to me because my grandparents had lived in a council home. My granddad was a rent collector. My mum and dad had been brought up in council homes. So I made the jump across. And subsequent to that, I've been really fortunate that I've become the Director of Development at Believe Housing. I took on that role in 2018, leading our new build development programme. And then more recently, at the beginning of this year, became the Director of Assets and Development. So I actually now have responsibility for all 18,000 homes that Believe Housing own, stretching right across from the east of the county and the Durham coast across into the rural west. So lots of different variety, and also responsible for our new build programme still as well. So it's very, very busy. There's lots going on, but I do still love it. Back when I still have those days like back when I was 16-year-old. No 2 days are the same, and I work with some incredibly talented individuals who make it an absolute joy. So I guess why we're here and why did I start that journey to become a NED? And how do I actually have the time to do it, to be honest? I sometimes wonder. But back in 2018, so around about 7 years ago, I was working at Believe as a senior manager. And at that time, I really aspired to become a head of service and possibly more if the opportunity arose. But in all honesty, I think I was probably badged as a good manager at that time, someone who had potential, but that I probably needed to gain a little bit more experience in terms of strategy development and leading a team and governance and understanding the broader context of how the organisation operated. And I think I recognised that as well personally. And despite knowing that I felt personally I'd be a good head of service, that I'd be a good leader, I had to own my own self development and gain that experience that I was perceived to lack. So at that time, I'll be really candid as well. I think I also probably had that little devil on my shoulder, that one telling me that I wasn't head of service worthy, that I was, I lacked the experience. Um, and that devil probably told me as well that I wouldn't get there and that I wasn't good enough. I've battled with this little devil my entire life. He's always there. But I always strive to dampen his torch, as I like to put it, and I always want to prove him wrong. So that's why my NED journey began. It was about my own self development, but also for me, it was about reinforcing my own self worth. It was about me proving to myself that I was good enough and that I could offer an organization my skills and the objective thinking that I thought they'd want to listen to when I spoke. And I also wanted to spite that devil that was sitting on my shoulder as well. Um, so my MED journey, I started in 2018 when I was only 34. And like June has touched on, I think that was a point of difference in applying in a boardroom. I hope no one's, and Judith, don't take anything by this, but generally NEDs are people who are retired. They're on an age, they have experience. So I think as a 34-year-old woman, with a little bit of something to say, that was different. That was that point of difference. And I think I stood out because of that. I've now served at Beyond Housing for 7 years with the organisation. I stepped down at their AGM in a couple of weeks' time. Beyond, if you don't know them, they have around 15,000 homes and operate across Redcar and Cleveland and the Yorkshire coast. So during my time at Beyond, I've not only sat on the board, I've also been an active member of their health and safety committee, their audit committee, and as well within my specialism of development as well, I've sat on that committee. And what that role's allowed me to do is gain real kind of strategic oversight of the whole business, understanding how you help shape and challenge the long-term strategy of an organisation, ensuring that it aligns with its vision and its values. Also understanding how an organisation is governed well and how it remains compliant with regulatory requirements, legal requirements, things like the Code of Governance and what the regulator for social housing is throwing at us in the sector. But also it allowed me to scrutinise decisions and policy and understand why certain decisions are made. And in addition to that, being a financial steward of a business, understanding and reviewing budgets, understanding financial planning, and performance report, and making sure that business is financially sustainable for the future. It's also allowed me to think about risk management, help identify and mitigate risk across the organisation rather than just in my own area and specialism of expertise. So not only am I thinking about asset management and development and regeneration, I'm also thinking about finance and other operational elements, antisocial behaviour, like what Judith, it gives you that whole breadth of an organisation and not just your own swim lane. I've really loved the role at Beyond. I can see how it was making me become a much more rounded leader and professional within my own organisation at Believe, because it was giving me that much broader context and allowing me to think outside of, like I said, my own swim lane. And it also made me think about the impact of the decisions I was making as a director of a business within kind of another area. So within neighbourhoods, as a director of development, the properties we developed, how was that going to impact kind of lettings, neighbourhood management if it was out of area, how is that going to affect our repair service? So it really gives you a different thought process to take back into your own organisation. I was also approached in 2021 about an opportunity to become a NED and trustee at a small arms house charity called Durham Age Mine Workers Homes. They operate across the northeast, but predominantly in County Durham, and have around 1,700 homes. And again, for me, it's like Judith says, I took that on more because it was a learning opportunity. Durham are a very specialist organisation that focus on predominantly bungalows for older people. That was something that allowed me to understand and round my experience with that particular specialism. And again, something that I am akin with, given that I, grew up with my grandparents living in a council home and a social home and a bungalow. So there's something that I've taken from that. But also I've also taken on a NED and trustee experience outside of sector. So I'm a trustee at an organisation called Red Hills, which is in Durham city centre. I've been at that since 2023. And Red Hills is a historic mine and heritage asset that sits in the centre of Durham city. It's also known as the Pitman's Parliament. And it recently reopened after being restored as a Grade 2 listed building as a cultural and visitor space within the city centre. So it's a fantastic thing, but also just shows how you can use your NED experience within social housing to then move out of sector if you should choose to do so. And I'm really pleased to say as well that I'm also going to be starting as a new NED at Broadacres. Again, an organisation that has about 7,000 homes operating in rural Yorkshire. If they welcome me and appoint me at their AGM in the next couple of weeks, but hopefully they do. So I guess after all of that, and the title of my segment was, what's the difference between a NED and the day job? And I think I've touched on it throughout kind of what I've spoken about so far. But for me, it's been really kind of honest and open and understanding that you're not in there doing your day job anymore. You've got to kind of leave behind what you would do on a day-to-day basis at an operational level at the door, and you need to think about the strategic context, what you're there for in terms of that business and its customers and its stakeholders, and very much have the strategy head on rather than the operational day to day. There's many a time I've sat in a boardroom or a committee meeting and I've kind of internally gone, oh, I wouldn't quite do it like that. But that's not what I'm there to do. I'm there to make sure that that development scheme, as an example, pays back in the time frame that the board have agreed to, that it will serve customers, whether it's built by X, Y, and Z or A, B, C. It's not my doing. That's for the people who are within Beyond Housing. I think the other thing that is kind of really opened my eyes as a NED is that it's moved me away from just my specialism. It's given me a real understanding of organisational governance and risk management and that stewardship role around kind of finance and reputation, and a wholeheartedly transparency on behalf of customers. But like Judith, I think very much, the NED role is a learning opportunity that I think everybody can bring something to it. Everyone has different life experiences and diversity of thought. It's a fantastic way to self-develop, but also it's a great way to dampen down that devil on the shoulder if anybody is like me and carries that around with them. So I think that's about my 10 minutes. And again, happy to take any questions at the end if anybody has them. And I'll pass across to Amy.
Thanks, Kate. That was really useful. I think it's good how they've actually dovetailed into one another. We're now going to listen to Amy, who's going to talk about her experience. It's all in the preparation. So Amy, over to you.
Thanks, Judith, and thanks, Kate. It was really interesting to listen to both of your stories. Obviously meeting you on lots of different levels, but mainly just seeing you at Believe Housing. It's so interesting to think about how you, like, where you are now and how you got there. So thank you, that was really interesting. So yeah, guys, I'm Amy Mooney, and as Judith mentioned a little earlier, I was on the very first board trainee programme at Believe Housing, and I now sit on the board at Believe Housing. And my background outside of housing is in business. So I've started and sold and ran a number of different businesses over the last 2 decades. I've just currently started a new startup, and I'm right in the midst of all of that now. And as much as I work in construction and the built environment, I never really sort of set out to end up on a housing board. It was a few years back now. I was digging into heat pump adoption. So my businesses over the last 10 years have all been around low carbon heating and heating systems. So I was looking at heat pump adoption and the government's new proposed gas boiler ban, and really just trying to understand sort of how new homes would meet net zero. And I guess that curiosity sort of pulled me into social housing, because housing associations are such an important part of the UK's journey into decarbonisation. And then sort of one search led to another, and I ended up seeing an advert on LinkedIn for Believe Housing's board trainee programme. And I guess what made me sort of stop scrolling, or what made me take action actually, is just how inclusive the advert was, like how it was written. So it didn't say anything like, so keeping in mind that I wasn't working within the social housing sector, it didn't say that you needed to have 10 years in housing required, or that you must have a degree or a qualification or even experience in this certain area. It talked, like Kate and Judith have just done, really heavily around diversity of thought and lived experience. And I guess that really struck a chord, because so I grew up in council housing, so I knew firsthand how important a safe, secure home was, particularly in the early 80s when my dad was in and out of work and things. And I'd never really sort of spoken about it before. If anything, particularly at work, I'd kind of brush over it, or sort of actually actively tuck it away. And I think this was the first time that I actually saw it written in print as something to as something that doesn't need to be shied away from, but could actually be valuable. And so yeah, I instantly knew, instantly I wanted to be a part of this company who was talking about this in such a way. And so I applied. I got on to the board trainee programme, and as you know, I was later appointed permanently to the board. But just kind of going into a little bit of detail about the programme and maybe what the day-to-day was like. So the programme itself had a focused training plan with set modules and workshops. Some of them were run by an external training agency who were really heavily involved in the social housing sector. But for me personally, what was the most, I guess, maybe the most valuable bit, although all of it was hugely valuable, but the bit that really sort of stuck out to me was working really closely with the governance team and the other trainees who I was on the programme with. And we'd sit down after something important or interesting had happened, or maybe just after observing a board meeting, and we'd all get to kind of talk through what we'd seen. And what was really interesting, and I think this is where diversity of thought and different backgrounds and lived experience comes in, we'd all sat and seen the same thing, but we all had quite different takes on it. And to then be in a space where we could really sort of chat about maybe what worked or what didn't in our own opinion, and what it all meant, was just such a huge learning curve. And I can remember at one point really disagreeing with something that had been agreed on, and then actually having the opportunity to talk through from other people's perspectives, and having my mind changed, but not having my mind changed because I was pushed into it or I was being sort of swayed by peer pressure, but just getting to really understand somebody else's point of view and their take and their experience. And that was sort of the start. I was just, I was hooked from that point. we met regularly with other board members and the exec team, and we'd be able to attend strategic planning events, which were just, which were really fantastic. And also I was really lucky. I was appointed a mentor at Believe. A lady called Hazel Dale, who'd been on the board for a number of years. She'd been on a couple of different boards, but after Judith left, she took a sort of the temporary chair position. So I was lucky enough to sort of sit directly with the chair and be able to, and she was really open and honest and really direct in terms of her feedback and things. And so I think having Hazel as my mentor was also quite critical in terms of me thinking right from the get-go, God, I really want a position within this company. And personally, I wouldn't take a board trainee program unless I really knew that I wanted to be a board member at the end of it, and I was really honest about that with Hazel at the very beginning. And as my mentor, I was able to say to her, what have I got to do to make this happen? And she was really helpful in that. So she would tell me where I was falling down and what I needed to do better at. And so yeah, so I was really lucky with that. And another thing that we did, which was I think really quite unique, and that most people at a board level would never have this experience in advance, but we held mock board meetings. So we'd take a real paper from the past. So it was an actual paper that somebody had written from the exec team for a board meeting previously, and the exec team member who had written that paper would then present it to us as if it was live. And it was role play essentially, so it was quite funny as we were kind of getting into it. But then we'd be able to like question and challenge and then gain assurance, really, just like you would in a real board situation. And so that live action part of the training was brilliant. It brought, I suppose, the governance side of things to life, and it gave us all the chance to practice, really, like I said, in a safe space where you didn't feel embarrassed about making the wrong question, or if you got a little bit too operational, it was we would be told afterwards that's not really the type of question, or it's a good question but you'd maybe rephrase it in a different way. And it just, for me, it's made the leap from into a permanent board seat just so much easier, I guess. And I mean, prior to that, so technically I had been in a governance role before. So obviously firstly, I'd run companies, so I'd been involved at a board level, but very much because they were my companies, I was very much operationally involved, so in all of the management side of things. But then I also sat as a non-executive director at Newcastle Gateshead Initiative, NGI. They had a sub-board called NGI Solutions, and that was all about sort of tourism and place branding, and they wanted my marketing background. And I guess at the time, particularly in my interview at Believe, I didn't really feel like it was going to be that important, or because I just felt like it was so so far disconnected from the housing world. And so I know I didn't really push on that too hard in my application or my CV or even my interview, but I do think, looking back, it was potentially a bit of a mistake, because it was, now I know what I know, it was super useful, because I guess it taught me how boards work in practice and how to contribute without straying into like the day-to-day management side of things, which I think if you work in management is really difficult to do. It's something that I still have to kind of bite my tongue, or just to have to remind myself that this is need to be looked at from a strategic, like, assurance level. So I suppose how to really use your professional skills but in a governance setting, which was really different to as Kate's just touched on before, in terms of your management role. So yeah, I think it's kind of important to say that your first board role or trustee role or governance role, it doesn't need to be in housing for it to be really valuable. Those skills completely travel, so whatever sector you're in now, or whatever role you have now, that experience can be can really prepare you for a housing association board. And in terms of preparation, so I've wrote a few notes. Yeah, so preparation for me, it was less about sort of finding the confidence, because I think it's really trying to find confidence is difficult, because even when you find confidence, sometimes your confidence can be through the roof. The next day, depending on so many different factors, it could be, it can be rock bottom. So the preparation side of things was really important, because for me personally, the more prepared I am, the more confident I feel, and so on and so forth. But Judith mentioned earlier about saying yes when opportunities arise, and I would absolutely second that. No matter how nervous you feel, say yes and then figure it out afterwards. And you might make a mistake, or it might not go as well as what you actually thought, that you wanted it to, but you will learn from it. And when you move on to the next thing, it won't feel as scary, and you'll feel that little bit more prepared. So yeah, so in terms of preparation, I guess it would be things like asking myself, so what can I bring to this role, and then also what do I need to learn to be really useful around the table. And so I would, it took me a while to kind of think about that and try to sort of relate it to housing. But then the more I started to look into it and I started to write it down and make notes, the more I thought, oh God, actually, yes. So from running a small business, I can bring experience of cash flow, of finances, and planning, risk, customers, people, from the construction side of things, and from the low carbon heating side of things. I can bring a perspective that has actually turned out to be really relevant around sort of certain challenges that housing associations face around repairs and net zero. And obviously for you, that could be completely different. You could be in finance or law or HR or education or community work. But I guess the point that I've learned is that, again, like Judith mentioned earlier, the board needs it all. It needs a well-rounded contribution. And again, one of the big things is that you don't necessarily need to know everything about that organisation or about the sector even before you join the board, because you'll learn loads once you're in. But I guess being prepared means being prepared to start dipping your toe in and getting familiar. And so a few ways, I've got like a few little bullet points, and then I'll wrap up about how I would do it, sort of in reflection if I hadn't gone through a board trainee course. So get really curious. So start following on LinkedIn or on other platforms social housing organisations, and specifically their leaders. If they're vocal, the more the better, and get involved in the comments, start having conversations, ask questions. And it's networking in person is brilliant. But obviously there's only so many hours in the day, whereas you can network online and have, build personal connections, and really, by supporting other people who are out there and talking about real serious issues, or asking questions about those issues, your name pops up, and you will become recognized. And so you'll see the real debates. It could be about damp and mold or repairs or complaints, or and you don't need to be an expert, you just need to be curious. There's things like joining networks. So obviously Wish is a brilliant example, but also the Chartered Institute of Housing, the NHF, and maybe all regional housing groups. And maybe it's not that you join them all, but you at least follow them on their social channels, and get involved, subscribe to their newsletters and things like that. Other things is look for roles that can give you governance experience, and it could be in your local school or the school that your kids go to, in terms of like a governor role, or it could be really small local charities, or charities that you really care about, or community organisations. This is a really good way to get governance experience that can completely transfer. And then I guess if you're already in housing, then perfect, start asking the questions. Ask if you can shadow a meeting, ask if there's a board paper that you might be able to have a look at that isn't, confidential, that's already been passed, so you can see how the board paper works. And, ask if there's any mentoring opportunities within your organisation as well. So, yeah, I guess you don't have to tick every single box. you know, boards want a mix. So, you know, in our board at Believe, there's such a huge variety of people from different experiences, and I genuinely believe now that the like that variety is a huge strength. So yeah, so if you're thinking, you know, oh, I'm not from social housing, or I am from social housing, and but I don't have the experience, I definitely would say just try to get involved in some way. Just make that first step. If you know, if you put turn this off today, and there's one thing that you could do, it's in the back of your mind, and for whatever reason you're not doing it, you haven't reached out, or you haven't sent that email, or if you haven't connected with that person, or even if you follow someone on LinkedIn and comment on their post, it's a start, and just, you know, just start doing it, and just get really, really clear on what you already begin, what you already bring to the seat, and yeah, just stop being curious and be willing to learn, and know that, I guess, your perspective has absolutely huge value. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Amy, I can see why you got that board role at Believe, honestly. I can see that. I can see that passion sort of shining through there. But I think there was also some really, really good tips there. And I know that I saw Alma, I think it was writing some things down. So hopefully we might have the opportunity of sharing all that with attendees. If not necessarily at the end of the session, we can send them out. I'm sure Alma will tell us how to do that. But we're now going to open up to questions from the attendees to the panel. So if anybody's got any questions, I think Alma was checking whether there was anything put in the chat boxes and such like. And if there's any questions, whether you want to direct them to one particular person, or you just want us to just all three of us chip in, we'll do that. Okay, so Alma, are you going to?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions in the chat box. One from Neve. What's the competition like for these roles? I've seen many advertised over the past couple of years, and I've been intrigued and interested by them, but have been shy in considering applying for them. So I'm not sure if that's directed at.
I think it very much depends on the organisation. If it's a large housing association with a huge national presence, I think probably they're quite well subscribed. There's quite a lot of people applying for those roles. But what I would say as a board chair, I was always looking for somebody that was different, that could offer something that a little bit different, not your normal traditional person that goes into a housing board role. The other thing I would say is, where do you want to start that journey? And you don't necessarily need to start that journey at one of the big sort of housing associations. Some that Amy mentioned about schools, you know, they always need trustees. There's lots of smaller charities need trustees, and you get such a lot. I'm learning such a lot from my NED role at Tyne. And you know, Tyne's are always looking for board members. The Usburn Farm is always looking for trustees. The voluntary organisation for the North East, go onto their website and see what's available. There is always lots of organisation looking for people to join their trustees, to join their boards or whatever. So don't limit yourself to one of the big sort of housing company jobs as a board member. Think about where can I get this experience and sort of and build myself as a really valuable, rounded individual with lots of different experiences to bring to them, would be my view. But I'll pass on to Amy and Kate.
Yeah, I will just say, so in terms of the competition, I'm really just echoing, I think you kind of covered it there, Judith. From what I can gather, there's smaller organisations who are crying out for help, and who don't find it as easy to recruit. And just doing a bit of a search online, again connecting with you know, some of the leaders on LinkedIn, just put it out there, start asking questions. What kind of experience are you looking for and things? And if there's nothing available at that point, they might know somebody who knows somebody. In fact, normally somebody always does. So just stop being really sort of intentional. If you know that you want a board role and you want it to be in social housing, but you maybe feel like you don't have quite got the experience right now, look at the sort of maybe the steps that you might need to take and just start with the smallest one. And often I think you'll find that you'll probably move through those steps really quicker, or maybe even jump a few steps. I know with the latest round of recruitment, I believe that was for the latest board position. I think it was one of the highest number of applicants, but Believe is obviously a big organisation here in the Northeast. So yeah, I think it's just a case of maybe having a look at what else is out there, and maybe if it's not necessarily social housing right now, looking at sort of smaller local community groups that you could maybe get involved in, if that helps.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. And I would also say that it's not always about the board role. I mentioned that there are committee roles within organisations as well. That can be a stepping stone, as well as the things that Judith and Amy have talked about around outer sector and schools, governance arrangements there. But I would just pick up on that. You've been shy to consider it. Challenge that devil. Don't be shy. Put yourself out there.
We've got a few questions in the chat. Thank you. We've got a few questions in the chat, and one from Jeannie, I think, has raised her hand. So maybe should we go to Jeannie first and then go back to the chat?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Jeannie. I think we can hear you now.
Yes, it's when you've got to change sentences. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I mean that was excellent from all three of you, in such a varied perspective of how to become a NED, which I think is really valuable for everyone on this call in particular, because it's different experiences of how you've come into the sector, or if you were within the sector. I suppose my one question is to all three of you, for everyone on this call, what's your one piece of advice? If our one takeaway, shall we call it, what's the one piece of advice you would give to us for anyone seeking a position on a board? What would it be? One quick one.
Mine would be do something that you really you enjoy. That's something that you've got a commitment to, because then it makes it so much easier if you actually, it's something that you really value and feel a commitment to it.
Mine, do you want to go in order, Amy? Mine would be step outside of your comfort zone, challenge the devil on the shoulder. Don't let the imposter syndrome kind of not make you want to do it. Challenge it, do it. Even if it's a no, understand why it's a no and how you can then build on that for the future. Don't let the devil stop you.
Yeah, mine's very similar to yours, actually, Kate. Mine would be, so decide what you want to do and you write it down and take action today, and don't let, and just take a small step. And if you said, I'm going to be a board member, and it doesn't need to be, I need to be a board member within 12 months time, and what have I got to do? So take that action now, like take that action today, and yeah, just stop second guessing.
Thanks. We've got a question from Claire Tetlow in the comments, which is, how common is it to find board trainee programs? It seems like such a great way to learn.
I would agree. It's an excellent way of learning, which is one of the reasons why it was set up with Believe. I know the Housing Diversity Network also do a board trainee program. I'm a mentor for them, because what they recognised was, when you actually look around the board table, and Kate got it absolutely spot on right, that the vast majority around board tables tend to be older, white, retired people. And there is actually a need to have younger people that are still economically active in the world of work, people that have experienced different life challenges along the way, people from minoritized communities. So the Housing Diversity Network do a board trainee program, but I've got no idea how easy it is to get on that program, because I'm sort of at the end process where I'm mentoring somebody once they're appointed.
Thank you. We've got another question from Eleanor. For someone applying to be a NED, how important is geographic proximity to the organisation? Are most meetings and responsibilities remote, or is there an expectation of being locally present?
Kate, I'll let you do that one.
Yeah. Thanks, Judith. I would say that geographic location isn't the be all and end all. You obviously have to have an understanding of the area and its, challenges, and understand what its customers, need and want. But if anything, actually, sometimes geographic location can be a barrier, because you have to think about conflicts of interest if it's in an area that you work in. So actually, post COVID, like we're doing here, lots of NED committee meetings, board meetings are done online, or they're kind of dual online and in person. So I would say it's not a barrier, but sometimes that might be dependent upon the organisation as well, and what they ordinarily like and how they want to structure their meetings. So for example, at Beyond, we have all our board meetings in person, but our committee meetings are online like this. At Believe, we have a very flexible approach. A member might be online and others might be in the room. There's nothing set down in stone. So I think it's very much dependent upon the organisation, but I would say no, geography is not really a barrier in my experience.
Thanks, Kate. There's another question from Julie Wearmouth from Sunderland City Council, which kind of segues on from that, which is, what are the realistic time commitments to being a board member, and how do board members in full-time roles manage this effectively in the housing sector specifically?
Amy, do you want to take that one, because you're the newest board member?
So because I run my own business, I manage. I'm flexible in terms of when I can work, and I manage my own diary and so on. So I can go to a board meeting or a committee meeting or a training session or something during the day, and then work on a night time and things like that. I'm not going to lie, it is a juggle, and it's not, and especially when you've got a family and maybe older parents and things like that, so it is a juggle, but it's also personally for me, it's an investment into me and my own future and what I might do eventually once I'm retired and things like that as well, and getting that experience when I'm young and fit and able, and I guess I sort of make it work. Some weeks are harder than others. If you're working full-time in a full-time role, if depending on where you're working, so if I don't know if you work in social housing or if you're in the sector, then if you're working within social housing, maybe it's a conversation that you could have with your employers, because your experience at a board elsewhere could be really valuable for them as well. Not necessarily actually in social housing. One of the girls who was on the trainee program with me worked at a big power station, and she spoke to her bosses about it, and they felt that her really picking up governance experience in a totally different sector was really valuable for them, and she's went on to, well, she got promotion and then she's got a better job, and absolutely having this on her CV helped to sort of do that. So I guess, yeah, I suppose every board's going to be different, but a lot of the meetings are online, I believe. But there is, our board meetings are in person, and there are things that you do need to be there for face-to-face for. So it's a juggle, but you can do it, and you can do it, but you just got to have some honest and frank conversations with your employer and try and swing it in a way that's going to be beneficial to them, I would say.
It'll usually have, when the adverts come out, what the commitment is over the course of a month. It might say 2 days a month or 1 day a month. And really that's quite flexible around when that time to read papers and things is going to be. But the things like committee meetings are usually sacrosanct to when they're online, but board meetings generally tend to be in person. But you're always given sufficient information about when they are, so you can put them in your diary and you can try and manage your diary as best you can. And most employers recognise the benefit to them by having a member of their staff who's involved in a board.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think the other thing I would also, as a takeaway, is that it gets easier as you get into it. Ordinarily, when you first start out in that role, you've got a lot of learning to do about the business and how it operates and to understand it. But as you get into that, I'm 7 years in, you've been there and you've understood it and you've developed some of that. So the prep work isn't as intensive as what it was when you first start out. So I would say, yeah, you get out what you get, you put in what you get out, you get out what you put in, you get out what you put in, that way around. Got there eventually.
I think we've run out of time now, guys, but there's lots of lovely feedback in the comments, so I'm sure the will read through when everyone's gone. I think there's one more question that perhaps could be answered personally at the end, unless you want to stay on and answer it now quickly.
Yeah, whatever.
It's just a quick one from Louise Dean. Do you have any tips to network in a team Zoom world, especially how to develop connections and informal conversations?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm going to pass that to Amy.
Oh God. To be honest, like Judith, you mentioned networking, and I genuinely believe in all aspects of work life. Networking is by far the most important thing that you can focus on, and it doesn't come natural to most people until you go and you make friends, you get to know people, and then you don't feel like an idiot walking into a room. But on Zoom, I don't think I've ever networked on Zoom. I network online, I network in LinkedIn, and all I would say is whenever you're networking, put more in than what you're trying to get out. So, and in fact, try not to get anything out to start off with. Just try to be really helpful, really supportive. If there's people that you know that at some point could be beneficial or helpful to you in your career, then get to know them, support what they're doing. So they could be writing, they could be speaking, they could be just be supportive, and you will know it yourself if you've done anything. And there's somebody who regularly pops up on your feed as supportive and then sends you a message privately to say that was excellent or whatever. You like them because they're being nice to you, and it is as simple as that. And then at some point in the future, if they meet you or if they ask something of you, you're more likely to want to try and help them. So I guess I guess it would just be putting yourself out there, getting to know people, asking questions, but another big thing is do it consistently, which is always difficult when you're busy, but trying to carve time out to network, I think, is really important. On a Zoom call, if that's what you were asking, I think it's difficult.
I would echo what Eleanor's just put in the chat, that you've been networking today.
Absolutely.
You've seen myself, Judith, and Amy today. Reach out on LinkedIn, ask some further questions, be inquisitive, like Amy said. This is all part of the network, and so take that step and reach out if anybody wants anything else.
And there's nothing wrong with having a virtual coffee as well. I've done that quite a few times, where I've got a few people together for a virtual coffee meeting and chatted through a few things, and that in a more sort of unstructured way is actually very beneficial as well.
I've got one more point, actually, and this is really, really important. Somebody told me, who's now become an investor in my business, and I met him through networking. He said, never, ever go to a networking event unless you're going to let people know that you're there. And by that, he meant always, if the opportunity arrives, always ask a question. And it's better to do it. So in Zoom, it's better to do it. So like, is it Jenny? Is it Janine or Jenny Ray? Yeah, sorry, yeah. So you were the first one to put your hand up, and so now I've seen your face and I've seen your name, and so therefore, it doesn't really matter what your question is. You've kind of come up and you've popped up, and you're on the radar, kind of thing. So it's difficult, especially when there's lots of people. But if you're at a live event, put your name up and put your hand up, and always say your name first. And if you're on a Zoom, ask a question, or else it's difficult because you will just blend into the background if you don't. Odd, but I think it's worth it.
Right. And I know that we have some information there from different people, and I know that Alma was actually recording as well some sort of tips and things. Are we in a position to be able to share that, Alma, after the meeting?
We can certainly send the tips to the delegates, but there'll be a recording. Normally takes a couple of weeks for that to be ready, but if anyone would like a copy of the recording, we can send that out to people.
Yeah, I just noticed there was some really good stuff coming through about the importance of this and the importance of that, and I thought, that just needs to be pulled together in a little sort of checklist type of thing, doesn't it? Yeah,
if anyone would like those, we can send those out along with your PowerPoints if you'd like to share those as well, Judy.
Yeah, that's fine. So can I thank, first of all, Kate, Amy and Alma, can I thank you for supporting this event today, but also for the attendees. I know a lot of them have left now, but I know it's hard in the middle of your day to take time out, but hopefully you've got something from this session, and you've got some action plan to take away and do within the next few days, and that's something really positive. So that's great. Thanks very much. Thanks for your time and your efforts, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Judith, thanks.